Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul?
and Jolene. And today we're talking about So You Want to Play a Druid.
A druid, yes. Now, druids have never been my favorite class. I don't think I've ever played a druid. They appeared back, I guess they appeared in original D&D in a supplement called Blackmoor. But
Blackmoor?
Blackmoor. Black
More.
M-O-O-R.
Ah.
It was the first supplement for AD&D, the 3 little books.
AD&D or D&D?
I'm sorry, original D&D. The little books, not black books. The little books. It was the first supplement. So it was the fourth one, and then they came out. And in that book, they had druids, but they were only non-player characters. And then in Eldritch Wizardry, another little book supplement for original D&D, they have you could play a druid.
Now, he says he never plays druids, but he uses druids as bad guys all the time.
Well, they are a favorite bad guy. I must be holding over some bad feelings since one of my friends always played a druid, and maybe I just have that hostility built into him. But
So what is a druid?
druid, well,
I mean, I know what a druid is.
so druids have a long history back to D&D, right? To original D&D, but I really didn't see them because we didn't play with the little supplements until AD&D. And in AD&D, they were a subclass of the cleric. I think what Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson did, they mixed this idea of...
Well, druids go way back in actual history. The idea
Right.
of druids.
The people in what is now England. What do they call that area? So
Not only England, Ireland, because when St. Patrick drove the snakes out, that's what he was talking about. The druids, the old religion. And druids,
it wasn't really snakes?
No, it wasn't really snakes.
Okay. All right. Druids, so Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax makes this mythology, I'm going to say mythology of druids, because nobody really knows, because they were all exterminated, right? Pretty much killed.
Depends on who you talk to.
I mean, when the Romans came in and they basically, they took half of England and built Hadrian's Wall.
They have come back. There's a whole sect of druids these days. A pagan sect.
Yeah, but I think paganism, I don't think it's a direct descendant of what they did. It's what people believe they did.
Exactly.
It's the neo-pagans, I would call them. It's this mythological mix of druids. I don't know, what do we call that?
If you are a druid, he's not trying to offend you in any way.
But what was that area of England called back in, what would they call it?
I don't know, Mercia. I don't know which part of England you're talking about. There were all kinds of parts.
Oh,
Northumbria.
Yeah, but
were...
okay. Get a history lesson here. What did the Romans call that region other than barbaric?
Britannia.
Britannia. There you go. So it is a mix of Roman period, what they believe
before Roman period.
Well,
yeah.
But that's how we encountered them. That's why we know about them, because of Romans.
Yes.
And so Britannic mythological ideas of what druids were, with a little bit of factual things about druids. So you come up with this idea in D&D about what a druid is.
Arthurian legend, probably Merlin, although they call him a wizard, was most likely part druid, part wizard.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's what I think. And so Gary and Dave Arneson came up with this character class, and he was a subclass of a cleric.
Yes.
So because
druids throw spells.
Right. In this case, they do throw spells, and they are very closely tied to
nature deities.
Yes, right, or just nature.
Oh, they usually worship a nature deity. I just read it.
So you're right. When I was young and a kid, we didn't really deal too much with the deity. We just deal with nature. So he was a nature. He was always out in the woods and stuff like that. So that was the AD&D, and he was a subclass of a cleric. He could throw spells, and he had weird things, right? He couldn't wear metal armor, right? Because it would interfere with his spell casting. He was limited on what kind of weapons he could use.
Wood or leather.
Wood and leather weapons.
You're still limited.
I remember that you were able to use a scimitar though, for some reason.
I don't think so.
Anyway, in the AD&D,
in AD&D.
Yeah, AD&D. So they were limited, but they also were able to throw healing spells, and they were also able to throw offensive spells. They had some offensive spells, unlike the cleric, which you would have to delve into evil spells to cause wounds and stuff like that. But to cause wounds, you actually have to touch a character or the opponent. It's like healing, but the opposite of that.
Well, it does say that you can have clubs, daggers, darts, javelins, maces, quarterstaffs, scimitars, sickles, slings, and spears. I'm going to assume that's because the handle is probably
wooden.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is with the scimitar, but I thought it was kind of funny that they threw that in. So almost, every mini maximizer druid would choose a scimitar, however you say it, because the damage it caused in AD&D. I think it did 1d8 points of damage, which was the same as a longsword.
Okay.
Which was the primary weapon of most fighters. My experience with wizards has always been since AD&D, when one of my friends started playing
a druid.
Now he was a interesting character, the player and the character, and I forget which one was first, but he had two druids because one of them died, and so he made another druid, and I really couldn't tell you the difference between the two druids, as they both had almost the same personality. Because I think what it appealed to my friend Mike, because they had to be neutral. It wasn't good or evil. It was this neutrality that I think appealed to my friend, and he really liked that idea of playing a neutral character that wasn't so much involved with law and chaos or good and evil, that you're trying to find a balance between all those aspects of alignments and stuff like that. And I really didn't like either one of those characters. I always found them to be very greedy no matter what. So Balinar Ravenlock and Orion Woodward were the two druids. And I forget which one died which way, but I remember one of them was we were in a dungeon, and I think we were in the Temple of Doom. That's what Felipe called it, as Felipe was running the game. And Mike was playing, I was playing, and I know for a fact Tom Jones, Mike's brother, was playing. And there was this big fire pit, like across the whole room, so you couldn't get to the other side. But on the other side there was a treasure chest, right? So Tom, being a thief, he was able to climb walls, so he was able to climb over the wall and get to the other side, and so he was able to get to the chest. So I don't remember which one it was. Whether it was Balinar Ravenlock or Orion Woodward, but one of the two. He goes, "Don't touch the chest." He tells. The funny part is, I don't remember Tom's character's name, but Tom's character goes. He just looks back at Orion Woodward or whoever it was, Balinar Orion, and he goes, looking at it, he checks for traps and stuff. There was no traps, and he opens the chest. And he goes, "I told you not to open the chest." In a fit of madness, as I like to call it, he couldn't handle the fact that Tom might steal something, right? so I say Tom, the player, not this is the character.
And this is his brother.
This is his brother. So there's that sibling rivalry. Yes. And Tom is older. Mm-hmm. So we were young teenagers. And so Orion, which your character was, Felipe goes, "I'm gonna jump over the pit." He goes, "It's like 10 feet. He goes, "I'm gonna jump." So he goes, "Okay." And my brother, being the fair GM he goes, "Okay, you need to roll something on this 20-side die." And the chances were not good. It was like you needed to roll like a 13 or higher, 14 or higher, something like that. And Mike, the player...
Was it a wax die like your brother made us?
No, by this time we had real dice.
Okay, just checking.
We had real dice. But if you miss, you're going to fall into the pit of lava, basically like super hot. No, it wasn't lava, but super hot coals or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, what's the big deal? He can't... Whatever he steals... It has to be small enough that he can hide it, and the rest is fine, right? So he goes, "I don't care." So he runs and jumps, and he rolls like a 1 or 2 or something like that, right? So he falls into the pit and instantly dies. There goes Balinar Ravenlock or whoever he was, and everybody busts up laughing. And Tom's like, "What is wrong with you?" So that's my story of Balinar Ravenlock. Or Orion Woodward. Like I said, I mixed up the two. The other story I have about the druid, played by Mike, is... You've
already told it.
The kid story, right? Yes. Where he's stealing money. So I think it really appealed to Mike's character, right? His own personality. And I think what was really interesting is that the druid, he was actually pretty good at playing a druid. I mean, throwing the spells and stuff like that. Basically, he's like a cleric, a hybrid cleric in AD&D. In second edition, I didn't play second edition, but I heard they did some. They always have to change something or other here and there. And 3rd edition was when things start getting really kind of weird because I think they came up with wild shape in that edition.
I don't know, but 5th edition has wild shape.
Right. And so it's close to that. 5th edition has a lot of elements of 3rd edition. The druid became its own class. I don't think it was a subclass of the cleric.
It's its own class.
He got a lot of different spells. He had wild shape. And what was another thing he got? An animal companion.
Yeah.
You could decide to get an animal companion. And I think Ian was a druid for a while, and so he would come up with these spells. One of his, I remember in his, by this time we're playing Pathfinder, and Pathfinder even opened up the more doors for the druid because there's all kinds of knickknacks and bells and whistles you can add because Pathfinder being what it was or what it is, and the spells that he had to utilize. And I remember, he was kind of smug about it. He threw a swarm spell on my creature, and so I'm like, okay, so I'm going to attack the swarm. He goes, you can't. I can see him smiling at me. I'm like, oh, okay. What? I go, what? Why can't I attack? And then he reads me the spell because the swarm is, you can't attack a swarm except by an area effect spell or something that affects the area. I'm like, oh, you little brat. So, the mini maximizer was coming out. He did in my monster or whatever it was. I was very impressed by Druid and what he was able to do. And like I said, I think Jolene came across this. If you're a first time player, Druid probably isn't the first.
Yeah, I was reading up on druids because I've never played a druid, but I have been in parties where there are druids.
Yes.
Ian, which he did really well. He really liked the idea, and I think someone who's going to play a druid really likes the idea of having an animal companion, yes, being able to shapeshift into an animal, and that kind of things. It gives it it's a very interesting aspect.
I think the reason that it's so difficult to play when you first start out
is because you have to not only deal with spell casting, which is hard in and of itself to learn all the rules about how you memorize the spell, all the blah 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 blah.
Yeah, area effect and all, everything specific to that spell.
Yeah, and you have to. It's very interesting. And so if you're like, I usually play a sorcerer, and it's easier for me because sorcerers don't have to memorize their spells every day. You just have spells, and you have spell slots, and you can choose which spell you want to use, and you already know it and everything. So, but sometimes some people like clerics and stuff, you have to choose your spells for the day.
Yes,
and you have to. So it's kind of like guessing what are you going to need today.
Right, like what tool are you going to use today.
And so, but with not only do they have spells, but then the what do you call it? Animal.
They have animal companion.
No, not only animal companion, but wild shape. So wild shape means that you shape into an animal, or you shapeshift into an animal.
And usually it's not like just a normal animal, is it?
So shapeshift, it takes
called wild shape.
Wild shape, and you have to. The management of it is, interesting. So
yeah, because you get different abilities depending on the shape that you choose.
And so if you're a new player, a lot of these definitions are vague. So unless you really study what other people have done and listen to people playing and stuff, you're gonna have a hard time, and you're gonna if the GM has played with druids before, is gonna know a lot more than you do. So it may be harder to get your character to do what you want it to do, or your idea of what it is.
So do druids have the same problem as wizards and sorcerers in the sense that they only know a certain amount of spells, or can they throw any spell inside the druid? Because clerics can throw any spell in the book, like they could throw any first level spell they want. They don't have a spell book.
They have a list of spells
that they can throw.
They have, for 5th edition, you have spell slots for first level and higher. They have to spend a slot, basically.
Yeah, but they have the whole.
You prepare your list of druid spells that are available for you to cast, choosing from the druid spell list.
Yeah.
When you do, you choose a number of druid spells equal to your wisdom modifier plus your druid level, minimum of 1 spell. The spells must be of a level for which you have the spell slots. It's, wisdom is your spell casting ability. It's the same with other. So you have to learn all the rules for your specific.
No, what I'm saying is like when you're a wizard, you get I don't know what the number is, but you get 5 spells, first level spells that and then you have 1 or 2 spell slots for first level.
So for druids, the first level, you have 2 known first level spells and 2 cantrips. So 2 first level spells and 2 cantrips.
Oh, so they do limit what spells you know.
Well, I don't know if they limit that. That's what you have, your spell slot.
So the druid is multi, but has multiple abilities, right? So he can throw spells, he can wild shape, and sometimes they can have an animal companion. I don't know if you forego wild shape for animal companion, but the reason it's so difficult probably is because you have to deal with all these other aspects, not just your character, but then if you have a wild shape, you have to deal with your character when he's in wild shape, which is like like a werewolf, right? There's you as a normal person with all those stats, and then there's you as a werewolf or as you as a bear and whatever it is. And then an animal companion, you just have to deal with the fact that you have this animal that can follow your command, and so you're dealing with like basically an NPC that is under your control. So for a first time player, it might be a little bit more difficult to play, especially if like I said, if you never played before. Third edition, we were talking about editions, but third edition, the Druid was really able to be different than a subclass of a cleric, and the abilities and the spells were really neat. I think in fifth edition that it holds true. I think they took a lot of what the Druid was in third edition, and of course they did away with quite a bit of all the technical aspects and try to make it a cleaner version of the Druid and easier to play. But you're still stuck with this wild shape problem. I mean, if you're a new player and animal companion. And I think what makes it really fun to play is that you're not stuck playing this one character. Is that you can, change into a wild shape, and it changes
You can only change into a wild shape at second level.
Right, which is pretty close to the beginning. I think
the way that their spells work is that you can have any of the spells equal to your wisdom modifier plus your druid level. So a first level druid has only whatever your wisdom modifier is +1.
Oh, okay. And so it's kind of like a sorcerer and wizard in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But what I like about them is, like the cleric, they have the whole library of first level spells at their disposal. They don't have to pick. Oh, I know 5 of those of the whole library. I know 5. You can pick anything that you want, and you can throw those spells.
Is that what a cleric does?
Yeah, a cleric has the same thing. But unlike
sorcerers don't do that. You choose your spells,
right?
That you know,
which is kind of limited.
Then you can not really.
Well, I mean, limited is in the sense that you don't have all the first level spells at your disposal, and sometimes you're like, man, I should have taken Mend. It would have really worked in this case.
Well,
where a cleric,
I don't know,
because a cleric can just like, oh, give me 8 hours, and I'll just know that spell that I needed, and he can take it. I think, do they still have to be neutral?
I can't find anything in 5th edition about the alignment.
Well, I think, like I said it before, alignment in 5th edition has really changed. I think they've kind of put it on the back burner, because before
it's still on the character sheet.
Still on the character sheet, but it wasn't it's not as prominent as it was in AD&D, and even in 3rd edition, it was very important because your alignment told you what spells you could throw. Some spells were chaotic spells, some spells were evil, and so you couldn't. I think there was a penalty if you threw a spell that, let's say you're good, and the spell was considered evil.
Well, they have something like that when you're doing necromancy.
Oh, that's right. They do have that.
You have to be really careful about whatever kind of
Not that you ever threw a necromancy spell? I think in 5th edition, do they still have those classes of spells like
I don't know,
aberration?
You would have to ask Ian about that.
Yeah.
They do have those spells, but I always look at them and go, "Well, that spell looks kind of evil to me. Why would I do that?"
But I think
just so you know, I haven't played a druid before, so I don't really know their spells or what they throw.
Would make you want to play a druid. I think if you really want to have a lot of diversity, I mean, you could, now they have I don't know if in 5th edition do they have urban druids, but there's different types of druids that. Well, no, in 5th edition they have, I forget what they call them, circles or something like that. But
yes, druid circles.
Druid circles. So in the original Player's Handbook, there was like the land druid, or like different terrains, and then in Xanthar's guide they added the circle of dreams, and so they added different things that made the druid less about being closely allied with nature.
Circle of land,
right?
And you choose different things.
Right. And so most of them were very nature orientated. And then people go, what about the city? There's no, they in the old 3rd edition they had like an urban druid. So I think in Xanthar's Guide they came out with the circle of dreams, and so druids have kind of taken a new druid class of classes.
The circles are Arctic, coast, desert, forest, grassland, mountain, swamp, underdark.
Right, so they're closely tied to the terrain, kind of. But now
there's also a circle of stars, and I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so what they did is they purposely said, well, they're so closely tied to nature. What about if they're not in nature? What happens if they're in a city and stuff like that? They just wanted to give them a little bit of a change. So in Xanthar's Guide, and then I think in the book, they added a couple circles that made them not so closely aligned to nature.
There were stars, and then there's also Circle of Wildlife.
Circle of Dreams, I think, is one that in
I don't
Xanthar's
have
Guide.
that one.
I don't have that
one. And I'm just looking at the regular one. I was also reading that there are these ideas about that you don't have to be from nature. It could be if you're like an orphan kid in the street.
Right.
Then you would probably spend a lot of time with various vermin, it says. So you're likely to live in one of those less nice parts of the city. So you could occasionally share some of the small amount of food that they had with rats, bugs, pigeons. And then they felt like they made a friend. So then years later, they're searching for a purpose in the world. And so they might become a druid that way. Or they talk about a dancer, a young lady dancer, who's bored with dancing in the city, and she does her routine at the beach, and suddenly inspiration, and she realizes that she has these powers by, lights are displayed and stuff, different kinds of things.
Oh wow, I never thought about it that way. That's pretty cool. That's like an origin story.
That's an origin story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
So you don't have to have lived in the woods all your life or anything like that.
Right, it'd be like what is it? Be a druid, a classical druid, where you're a tree hugger and hug trees, and then are told about this arcane connection we have to nature.
I'm pretty sure that's not what a classical druid is.
A classical D&D druid, I was thinking, not like classical neo-pagan druid. Okay. So would druids be something that you would want to play?
No.
You said emphatically no. You like sorcerers.
It looks really complicated. The idea that
you play sorcerers, they're kind of complicated, no? Or you think they're simple?
I've learned all about them, so it's easier to do.
So what makes them complicated? The whole aspects of them having wild shape.
I wouldn't really want to be a shapeshifter.
Why is that?
I don't know.
It reminds you too much of a werewolf or something?
No.
Okay. I think we have a lot of ideas about druids being closely tied to nature, and I think they've tried to get away from that by coming up with these other circles of where a druid might come from. Like, I like the idea of an orphan in the streets, right? So his circle wouldn't be, Arctic or in the woods. It might be the circle of, you would have to come up with something, the circle of the slums or something, even though, or whatever you want to call it. And so, or the streets even, because it's a different environment. And even in that environment, people might become attuned to that kind of environment. And so they would be a druid of that kind of world.
Well, druids are fighters too, right? Because they can fight.
Well, yeah, I guess they can.
They throw spells and they have weapons like quarterstaffs, or I suppose they can throw magical weapons if they have them.
I think they can throw offensive spells. So I think they have some offensive spells that they can cast. They're not like, they're not like fireball or something, but they're offensive enough that you would want to use them on a regular basis. So druids are a very neat.
How would they become part of your group?
Well, that's always been the case, right? Because like if they were like, okay, let's say they were a regular druid and they're closely tied to some piece of land somewhere, why would they go adventuring with you, right?
So you'd have to come up with a backstory for that, a reason.
Right. Maybe they raised your grove and you're really mad about it.
You're on a quest to find something.
Yeah, so that was always a problem, but even back in AD&D, is why a druid would want to hang out with these other ruffians.
But I don't know that that's a big problem, because that's a problem for why any D&D characters are together, right? Most people most people, most dwarves aren't going to associate with elves and humans unless there's a reason for them to be out there, right? So, but in D&D, it's not necessarily, the classical trope is that you meet in a bar, you're all just there, and suddenly you're thrown into this adventure, right? But usually now with backstories and stuff, people have gotten a little more creative,
why you're together. And I think
how you know each other, you have some kind of connection to somebody in the group. You don't have to have a connection to everybody in the group. Maybe you just know the dwarf that pulled you out of the river, or
that's
something.
That's fantastic idea. Yes.
Yeah. Or if you're an urchin from a city, then some noble, maybe she picked you up and helped you, and now you follow her around and help her.
And I think that you're totally right, which makes the druid even more difficult. I think it's the most difficult person to get into your game. Because, why would they leave? Because they're usually stewards of a certain place,
maybe
right?
They were sent off on a quest. Or maybe they needed to... I don't think they have to be stewards of a certain thing. Maybe some orc came and killed one of their animals that they liked, or their animal companion.
Oh yeah, I mean, but I'm saying is
there's all kinds of all kinds of backstories you can use to do it, but you have to come up with something. Right?
I think you have to come up with something, because normally it seems to me, just my own preconceptions, is that a druid is going to be a steward or something, right? They're going to be taking care of a plot of land or whatever it is, or a beach or something. And they're going to want to be a steward of that, and to go adventuring with this bunch of guys that all they want to do is kill stuff and take their stuff might be of a stretch.
Maybe you meet the druid in your party as you're camping out along the side of the road, and his animal companion or something comes up to you guys, and instead of killing it, you feed it. Or,
as a test to see how...
Or he overhears your quest that you're going on. Yeah. And
that's one way. I guess, but that could almost...
That could backfire on you?
No, that'd be fitting for everybody, but you're right. I think the druid, it would have to be something compelling enough to get him to go away from what he knows, or what he's protecting, or what he wants to see protected, right? Maybe that could be part of the quest. Maybe the characters inadvertently are doing something that would benefit whatever this druid is looking after.
And if you're gonna do this and bring the druid in some way, try not to be a Disney movie and kill off the parents or the village. All Disney movies when I was a kid, all Disney movies, the parents died. Bambi.
Did Bambi?
Need I say more?
Bambi? Oh,
a hunter killed the mother.
Oh, wow. I don't think I've ever seen that movie, I hate to say.
I was traumatized by it as
were
a
you?
child.
That's terrible.
But I'm just saying, whatever the backstory is, it doesn't have to involve having the whole family slaughtered.
Well, you know what? What's weird is that I think the people who have played druids have always had a backstory. Even Mike, way back, they were talking about the 1980s. Mike always seemed to have a backstory about his character, and that was when I had no backstory, right? I was just Ingmar the Paladin, or whatever my name was, and I wanted to go around and adventure. That was my quest. So where Mike, he had a reason to be out in the woods and building his manor out there because he wanted to be close to the patch of woods that he wanted to protect, and that was something that he did on his own. I remember my brother, who was running the game, telling him that he should do that. I think he just came up on his own. So usually, to me, it seems like people who play druids are very creative in the sense that they usually want a backstory. They're usually a story of why
they're out there,
and why they're going to adventure with these murder hobos who are out there, on the road and being chaotic and crazy. But I think they're a very valuable character. I think they can throw spells, they can throw offensive spells, they can do healing spells, they can wild shape and have animal companions. And I think it's kind of like a jack of all trades, but they say what a jack of all trades is a master of none. I think they can be quite useful, and they be a very crucial part of a party.
Not only that, if they're always been in the woods, which obviously they don't have to have been, but if you're in a city, if they go into a city with their companions, it'll add flavor to to the story, right?
Yes, I think Ian had like a big old Bengal tiger or something. I think they grow as you grow, right? As you grow in power, that the animal companion gets more and more powerful, because you don't want like a dog when you're 10th level and anything can swipe at it and kill it in one blow. So your animal companion gets stronger and stronger, bigger and bigger as you go along.
That's Saul's idea. I don't know if that's real or not.
That's true. That's true. Not just my idea.
So there you go. If you want to be a druid, go for it. Learn all the stuff. I would do a little research on it. So
yes.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more difficult. It's not such a straightforward character class to play.
Which might be interesting for people who don't want to play a straightforward character anymore.
Right.
Or ever have wanted to play a straightforward character.
I mean by straightforward, like a fighter. Even though in 5th edition fighters are kind of weird because of all the action points, what they call them. I don't know if that action points, but these points that they spend to get like special powers,
if you go that way with
your fighter. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
And I think Sorcerer is a little bit easier because all you have to worry about is the spells you're throwing. And not even that, you just have all you have to do is pick the spells that you can memorize or that you know. And then
which I think is actually easier, because then you're not looking at all these spells going, which ones do I want to do today, or which ones do I want
Wow,
to do?
Yeah, as a cleric, that could be a real problem.
Because I wouldn't like that. I like having the spells that I know. So that's maybe.
And you know them well.
Yeah.
Right, you don't have to worry about the other ones you don't.
You need me to throw a fireball? Just show me where and get out of my way. That kind of thing. Versus, let's see. Today I'm going to choose.
Yes.
That would be harder for me.
Oh yeah,
and I would be.
It is harder. I mean, it's harder because like you're trying to forecast what you're gonna throw later on.
How do you know?
You don't.
So.
Damn, I should have taken that Vent spell.
I should have done this one.
So it's a good jack of all trades class. You like throwing spells. You like gaining physical combat into wild shape. Go into a bear. You can go all raging as a bear and other things. So I think if you really like a little bit of a challenge in playing a character class, and you don't mind doing a little bit of homework, the Druid.
Go for it.
Druid seems to be your
have fun
cup of tea. It's not for Jolene.
Not for me, but that's okay. I might try it now. I'll have to do some research on it. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. Have a great day.